Ever since we moved into our house a couple years ago, my wife has been wanting some raised garden boxes. Now, I could have gone out and just bought these for $200 to $300 a piece, but I figured might as well take good use of my time and build some for her. So I started out by laying out these 1 by 12 by 8 foot long planks, cedar planks, that I got from a local supply store here. I initially started out by laying them 3 wide. I then took these rough cut 2x4 cedar studs and cut them to size so that I could use these as the legs for the garden boxes. The way I was planning on laying these out was to do 4 legs on each side, as well as there will be 2 legs on each end piece. I then laid them out evenly across the sides of these 1 by 12 planks and screwed them into place with these 2.5-inch deck screws. You'll see later on that the second box that I did, I actually screwed in from the inside of the garden boxes just to hide the screw heads a little bit more. I wish I would have done this with the first one, but I wasn't going to go back and redo it, so it was good enough for how I had it. Now these garden boxes are going to measure about 4 foot by 8 foot, so they'll be a perfect, decent sized garden box. I then lifted these up just to check and see how I like the height, and I realized that they were way too tall for not just me, but my wife, who has T-Rex arms. So reaching into the garden box would not be very productive. So I decided to take one of the 1 by 12 planks off and then cut the excess 2 by 4s off evenly. And that's my first completed side for these 4 by 8 garden boxes. I then went ahead and just replicated what I just did for the other side of the garden box. Took the 2 by 4s, cut them to size, placed them evenly across the 1 by 12s, and then screwed them into place. I made sure to squeeze the 1 by 12s together quite tightly while I screwed the 2 by 4s in, just so that there wasn't any major gaps. For the end cap pieces, I again took these 1 by 12 cedar planks, cut them in half, which gave me 2 4-foot pieces, which would be perfect for these end pieces. I then took the 2 by 4s, 2 of them per end cap, cut them to size. I repeated essentially the same exact process that I did for the side pieces for these end caps by squeezing the 1 by 12s together, taking the 2 by 4 rough cut cedar pieces and screwing them in with the 2.5-inch deck screws. If you do end up doing one of these projects, you're going to make sure you grab a couple of boxes of these deck screws, as you will go through quite a bit of deck screws, and especially if you want this to be nice and sturdy. I then took this end cap piece once I completed it, placed it against the side piece that I had finished laying on the ground. And then because I gave myself a little bit of extra room with the 2x4s on the end cap pieces, it made a nice 90-degree angle once it butted up against the 2x4s that are attached to the long 8-foot side pieces. And then I took the other side piece, set it into place, and repeated the same exact process to attach it to the end cap. Again, I repeated the same exact process for the other end cap piece. Set it into place. Made sure everything was nice and tight and snug, and screwed it into place. Now, to be honest, I'm not too concerned about how perfectly measured and square everything is on this, just because that's not what I'm going after. I'm just going after a solid box that will hold enough dirt so that we can plant some vegetables and whatnot inside. Now, because I had screwed the screws in from the outside, I had a couple little sharp nubs that I took my grinder and just grinded them off with so that nobody would cut themselves when reaching inside the garden box. The next step in the process was to take these 1x6s, and these were a little bit smoother than the other pieces of cedar that I had gotten, just because I knew these would be more where hands would be touching and sliding against, so made sure these ones were a little bit smoother. But I went ahead, cut a 45-degree angle on the ends of these so that when I join my corners together, I will have a perfect 90-degree angle that looks nice and clean. Once I had these cut out how I wanted them, went ahead and took these deck screws again, screwed them in from the top, and made sure that these screws sat nice and flush. I repeated the process for the other side by cutting the angle the same exact way, taking the screws and putting it into place. Again, repeated the same exact process for the end cap and attached those into place the same exact way as I did the side pieces. One more time in slow motion. You probably can't tell by her cry, but don't worry, she was just fine. Now, back to our regular scheduled programming. Again, just completed the last end cap top pad, screwed it into place, and we have essentially a complete garden box now. Haven approves of it, so now it's time to start on the next one. One quick thing I wanted to mention, you probably saw it, but I made these 2x4s on the side a little bit longer, just so they could stake into the ground and hold their weight a little bit more. So once both boxes were constructed, I then took some 220 grit sandpaper, put it on my DA, went around mostly just this top 1x6 piece, just so that I could eliminate the amount of splinters or sharp edges there might be. Once I was done, I'm now essentially ready to move these garden boxes over to the area where they're going to be sitting and fill them with some dirt. All in all, I think I'm into these boxes about $140 or so total. And I know I didn't show it, but I just filled these with some regular topsoil dirt, and then we went ahead and threw some extra screen topsoil on top of that, as well as some compost, and then we went ahead and planted the vegetables and whatnot inside. All in all, not too bad for about 5 to 6 hours worth of work. I appreciate you guys watching. If you don't mind, feel free to subscribe, hit that like button, and we'll catch you on the next video.